Year 10 and 11, welcome to your comparison of the Emigree and Tissue in preparation for your AQA English Literature exam. Quite a few requests for the Emigree. So what I've done is like most of my videos, I've put down the similarities and the differences. And then what I've done is I've written 2 example paragraphs. So if you are wanting an example response, please continue to watch the video because they'll be on at the end. I always start my videos in the same way for poetry because we are comparing, remember? So don't forget that through a comparative essay, we must use connectives to show that we are comparing the structural devices and the language devices utilised by the poems. And there's an obvious list there. Things that are different are at the top there in black, whereas on the other hand, however, in contrast, unlike and alternatively. And if things are similar, we might use similarly, likewise, equally, as with, or in the same way. And again, much like the rest of my videos, not that we shouldn't use the word shows, but we might want a variation. So dead straightforward, suggests, implies, outlines, highlights, describes, communicates, connotes, emphasises, reveals, displays, establishes, portrays, represents, illustrates, informs, means, conveys and symbolises. So again, it's just so that our expression is varied, and I think more often than not we can sound more mature. I always stick to the same format, and my format's quite straightforward, and my students do tend to do very, very well on the poetry. I would just do an introduction, which needs to be very quick because this exam is so jam-packed. Structure in one poem, compare it to structure in the other, language in one poem, compare it to language in the other, and you probably won't get time for a conclusion, as I say, with this exam being the really long and stressful one, I suppose. In terms of structure then, the Emigree is on the left, as you can see, Tissue is on the right. In terms of structure, the Emigree uses 3 stanzas, and the first 2 are 8 lines in length, and the last one is 9 lines. Now, the last line obviously lengthens the poem, and this is perhaps the speaker clinging on desperately to her memories of home. She doesn't want the experience to end. If you need in-depth detail of each poem, then please check out my individual poems. But we can see that she's desperately clinging on to the positive memories she has, and that links very closely to the fact that refrain is used in the word sunlight to end all 3 stanzas. The poem doesn't rhyme, and therefore we've got free verse, but there is a suggestion of a rhythmic pattern because there appears to be 5 stresses on the line. Although this doesn't fully establish itself in terms of being on every single line, it is on quite a few lines, and therefore this is a reflection of the speaker's state of mind, that she is attempting to remain positive in terms of her experiences of home and what she thinks of when she considers home. But actually there is a sense of unease here and something complicated and something a little bit more complex. And that is supported, isn't it, by lines such as, I am told it may be sick with tyrants, as if she's almost in an argument with herself as to which version of home is real. Sorry, Tissue, obviously there on the right, is unrhymed irregular quatrains. And this potentially is the irregularity of human life, I suppose, and the flimsy nature of paper, but I've got a better explanation for that in my answer, I think. Now, Tissue consists of 10 stanzas, and the first 9 stanzas are 4 lines long, hence it being a quatrain. However, the last line stands out. So similar to the Emigree, they both use a final stanza that stands out. So where the Emigree has an additional line, Tissue finishes with a single line. Therefore, that is emphasised and it's segregated from the rest of the poem. And what it does is it emphasises and solidifies the extended metaphor that is at play throughout. This idea that paper and human skin is closely linked. But the fact that we finish with turned into your skin and the final word being skin, we have the significance of human life. It doesn't matter how fleeting human life is, we are being told about how important it is. There is, again, a sort of sense of unease there in Tissue because we are reminded throughout the poem of our mortality and the fact that we will die. Another similarity then is the free verse. Free verse is used in Tissue as well, and tissue, sorry, I can't get my words out. Tissue uses an unsteady rhythm, and that is the irregularity of human life, the fact that we can't predict what's going to happen to us, the fact that spontaneous things can alter who we are. And she actually references how we are altered throughout the poem, how our skin alters, how we alter, how we change with age. I do apologise for me not being able to get my words out there. A little bit more on structure, just if you wanted extra interpretations, is, as I said, the similar amount of syllables could arguably be this desperation to be positive, but the unease is very clear because it isn't always regular. Because, as I say, if you count the syllables on each line in Emigree, there's a slight change. The free verse, if you want, again, extra interpretations, we've got the freedom of thought, in the sense that she remains loyal to the memory she has. It's as if she's trying to remain independent and firm in what she thinks about her home. But can we be clear that there is an emptiness about this narrator? And we get that in the simile hollow doll, don't we? There is an emptiness about her. Whether that is because she clings to the memory of home or because she is yet to experience her new life, I'm not so sure. Tissue, enjambment is important in tissue because it makes the poem run on. And what this does, this flowing nature, again, is there to highlight or allude to the delicate nature of human life. And if we were to compare our lives to paper, paper is easily damaged, paper is easily ripped and ruined, and therefore there's an interesting interpretation there. Sorry, I seem to have repeated that on my slide. I apologise. If we were to move to language then, language, before I show you my example paragraphs, there is a lot more to see in the Emigree. So if you watch my individual videos, there's a lot more to see. So what I've done here, I've just written down or highlighted the ones that we might mention it in an exam. You've got I left it as a child. So when she opens, there once was a country I left it as a child, there's an air of mystery. This idea that the city is now unreachable and she has to recollect things from her past because she can't return. We get the worst news. The vocabulary used throughout the poem depicts a war-torn country under the control of government. If the speaker's memories are of childhood, then perhaps these terms are meant to represent the adult world. So we've got a conflict then in what is happening now as an adult and what was happening when she was a child. If you are writing about the Emigree, we can't avoid sunlight. It is an instance of refrain, as I said earlier, because it finishes every stanza. And that repeated adjective implies that the speaker has an idealised notion. It's a dreamlike picture of the past where something is always sunny. However, the place is not as perfect as she remembers it. And then we get other words coming into play like dark and death, and that implies that her memories are ideal. There is a sense that her relationship with the place could be threatening when we get the mention of tyrants and the something that is war-torn. Apologies, my voice is going. And just to correct myself there, sunlight, I apologise, is not an adjective. I don't know why I said that. Tissue, we get paper that lets the light shine through. The light that shines through the paper is a representation of God, and the light is often used as a symbol of truth in religious texts. In the second stanza, the speaker refers to the Quran, and that further supports the idea of the light being Allah or God, which is able to alter things, especially if you are a religious person or a religious believer. And there's that word alter, which I did mention earlier. Tissue, though, uses real life references as well. So we get the real life instances when paper is used. So we've got maps, we've got receipts, we've got architects' drawings, And each of these items is connected to aspects of life and important aspects of life, such as going on a journey, using money, a home, buying a home, buildings. And this demonstrates how important but also how fragile paper is. And Imtiaz Dharker is highlighting almost that we really can't go through the most important moments of our lives without paper. Back to the Emigree there, we've got cannot break my original view. Metaphor there in the sense of break. It's a metaphor, as we said earlier, to show her desperation and the memories of her childhood and this idea that they won't be changed. And that's the independent thought I was telling you about earlier and the loyalty. The metaphor of the bright filled paperweight, I'm going to detail that in my example response if you hang around. The comparison of her memories to a paperweight. Now, the adjective bright is positive, but what you've got to remember here is the noun paperweight. A paperweight holds things down. Yes, there is a suggestion that she is connected to home, but if something is being held down, there is an implication that there is a restriction. Now, you need to think what the restriction is. Is she restricted from experiencing life in her new home because of being loyal to her old home? Is she restricted because she is so desperate to see her home as something positive, and therefore her mind is restricted? There once was a country. The country is left anonymous. It can be anywhere. Therefore, the poem becomes universal, and there's a universality about it, and therefore it can be any war-torn country or anyone who has been forced out of their home. It may be sick or with tyrants. Again, interesting metaphor there to show the country and her home is war-torn and is now ruined. And if you look, it may be, there's almost a sense of denial in that, as if she doesn't quite believe that it is actually ruined by the tyrants that live there or that own the land or rule the land, if you like. And tyrant is an interesting word as well, isn't it? Because a tyrant is a dictator. It's someone that doesn't really give you a choice. And remember, we have a narrator who has been forced from her home. Tissue then, paper thinned by age or touching. The thin paper represents old age in this instance, and the idea that when we age, time makes the skin thinner, and we alter because we gain wisdom. We alter because we experience painful things, whether that be physical or emotional or spiritual or mental. The used books becomes again an extended metaphor representing human life, because there's a suggestion here that human skin has been touched and used by other people, much like books, like the Quran, where a hand has written in the names and histories who was born to whom, and that then links to the above line about us all being altered by the touch of someone else, by experiencing things with other people. If buildings were paper, I might feel their drift, see how easily they fall away on a sigh, a shift in the direction of the wind. We see then now the power of external factors on the paper, which acts as a metaphor for the building, if buildings were paper. And we see, I suppose to a certain degree, the power of nature there, that the wind can change things. And as I said earlier, this flimsy, delicate nature of paper is highlighted. The Emigree, again, the speaker describes recalling that child's vocabulary and compares it to a grammar that spills out like the stuffing inside a doll. So this refers to emptiness, doesn't it? The speaker will soon remember every word of the language, and we get that in every coloured molecule. But the simile that child's vocabulary I carry to you like a hollow doll opens and spills a grammar. Now, if she's a hollow doll, there's that theme of emptiness. Something appears to be missing in terms of the narrator, and that's where there's this sense of unease. Again, I'm going to reference this in my answer. As I said earlier, the city is never identified, and Rumens keeps it a mystery. And in that way, it's any place that anybody has loved. And as we age, we are all exiles from our childhood. We can't go back to our childhood. This idea that it's filled with bright, unreachable memories, and time makes the memories glow to become something clear and something positive. So actually, in terms of something universal, we get this idea that perhaps childhood memories are idealised because it's a happy time. Being a child is a happy time, a carefree time. Tissue, then again, we get another metaphor in the grand design, which refers to the way a life is built. The poet refers to the religious idea that man is made in the image of God, the grand design. So the perfect image of God is the living tissue, I suppose. It might fly our lives like paper kites. Similarly, image of freedom references nature again. This idea of the wind carrying the paper does become this link to something freeing. And as I said, we do throughout get the practical uses of paper: birth certificates, death certificates, receipts, maps, all of those things that we know we need paper for. Again, as I say, there's more to say about the Emigree. So we've got white streets. The adjective white has a suggestion of innocence, so we are reminded it's a child. Also, the country being innocent before the conflict. Adjective graceful, and the positive imagery in galore. She goes on to say, it may now be a lie banned by the state, but I can't get it off my tongue. It tastes of sunlight. That metaphor is interesting because it's this idea that she can't help but be positive regardless of what she is told by the tyrants and the dictators. But interestingly, and I think a powerful line in the poem is the personification. I comb its hair and love its shining eyes. The city is personified as someone very close to the speaker, a lover or a child, someone she admires. And the word shining links this phrase to the theme of light, which we've had throughout the poem in sunlight. And the line suggests that the Emigree spends a lot of time adoring the city and actually trying to improve its appearance, defend it. And there's a sense in which the Emigree, the narrator, wants to spend time and attention on her memory, on this memory. The effect on us then is we see that she is emotionally dependent upon her home, and it's almost as if she's homesick. Tissue does, I suppose, to some degree become a little bit repetitive there. As I said, the buildings and the reference to light are a symbol of God and how God has constructed man. The building being made from paper, as I said, links the living tissue and our skin together. There is a suggestion that we can outlast records, paper records in buildings, but there is a heavy irony there, isn't there? Because we know we're going to die. So therefore we have two things at play. This idea that we might be able to outlast paper records and buildings, and then also the vulnerability of human life. And we are reminded throughout the poem of our mortality. Okay. In terms of example then, if we were trying to compare structure, and I'm not saying this is the right answer, this is just, as I say, my interpretation, we might see something like this. Carol Rumens employs 3 stanzas in which the first 2 stanzas are 8 lines each and the last stanza has 9 lines. The longer final stanza implies that the speaker can't let go and refuses to relinquish her memories of home as she desperately clings to the taste of sunlight. Furthermore, free verse is utilised and there is a suggestion of a rhythmic pattern of 5 stresses per line. Arguably, this could reflect the speaker's state of mind, which, though positive in many ways, is also uneasy, unsettled and complex. Alternative interpretations in regards to free verse could be the speaker's sense of loyalty to her home, which could be referenced through the metaphor paperweight. Conversely, the combination of free verse with a regular rhythm contains a tone of emptiness. It appears the speaker is torn between memories and what she is told. This emptiness juxtaposes the paperweight mentioned above and is solidified through the hollow doll simile. Similarly, Tissue by Imtiaz Dharker uses a final stanza which differs from the unrhymed quatrains utilised throughout the poem, the key difference being that it is a single line turned into your skin. By emphasising and segregating this final line, Dharker serves to highlight the connection between paper and human skin and ultimately stresses the significance of human life, however fleeting that may be. Additionally, and much like the Emigree, free verse is used and in this instance represents tissue paper and the many references to the practical uses of paper such as a birth certificate, but perhaps more prominently creates a somewhat uneasy notion of mortality and the vulnerability of being a human and the physical alterations which are often present on our skin. Both poems seem to contain the theme of vulnerability. Okay, so pause that video. I hope that is useful. And then If we were looking at language, I haven't done everything because there's so much to say. I've just picked out a couple of things as an example. So if we were doing language, we might write something like this, but as I say, it's just my interpretation. In the Emigree, refrain is used through the adjective sunlight, and this suggests that the speaker has an idealised, almost dreamlike picture of the past, where it is always sunny. However, the place is not as perfect as she remembers it, and vocabulary such as dark and death imply that things are not as ideal as her memories suggest. As the poem progresses, there is a sense that her relationship with the place may be threatening to her in some way. Moreover, the metaphor bright, filled, paperweight link the speaker's memories to something heavy. Admittedly, the adjective bright has connotations of positivity and hope, but by very definition, a paperweight holds things down and is potentially restricting her from other experiences, or even more worryingly, the truth about her home. Also, the narrator describes recalling that child's vocabulary and compares it to a grammar that spills out like the stuffing inside a doll. Interestingly, the speaker will soon remember every word of this language, every coloured molecule of it, and the simile that child's vocabulary I carried here like a hollow doll opens and spills a grammar portrays that the speaker actually feels empty, and this contrasts with the repetition of sunlight. On the other hand, Dharker opts for an extended metaphor as her most prominent language device, paper thinned by age or touching. Throughout the poem, the paper represents human skin and human life, and more specifically in this line, old age. As we age, time makes the skin thinner, and the poem may suggest that when this happens, things alter, because we gain wisdom, and we can also be altered through painful experiences. This metaphor continues into an image of buildings and also light as a symbol of God. These ideas link to imply that human life is a design or construction made by God himself. The building being made from paper is once again linked to human skin, living tissue, and then your skin conveys the notion that human life can outlast paper records and buildings, although there appears to be a heavy irony used here. The vulnerability of human life is undeniably outlined, and we are reminded about our mortality in this poem and the fact that our lives will end. Okay, so I hope that was useful. I do apologise for not being able to get my wording out there and for saying that sunlight is an adjective. I've done it there and I don't know why. I apologise. I'm not very good at editing my videos though, so I'm sorry about that. That is my fault. I hope that does show you some potential things to say about the two, and massive good luck in your English literature exam.